county representatives. We understand we have some new information, which is going to be really good because it's going to start answering some of the questions right off the bat. That's going to be nice. We're also going to then start sharing, after we've shared the information that we have, we're going to start sharing concerns and information with each other, and then hopefully we're going to come up with some solutions in the end. We're going to go ahead and we're going to track all the good ideas, all the questions, concerns, good ideas, and then hopefully we'll package this up and have that as a tool to use as we move through the winter, and possibly also approach the county, asking for a little bit more clarification, a little bit more leeway, some guidance. So anyway, thank you very much for being here. With that, what I'd like to do is thank all the panelists for being here, and I'm going to start with the county representatives. What I'd like you to do is just introduce yourself and let us know what your role is. If you're here to help educate us, maybe listen to us, maybe both, just let us know a little bit about what your goal for the meeting is. I'm going to start with Grace Kuba. If you can introduce yourself and let us know what department you represent.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So my name's, I'm Grace. I'm from the county. I'm with the county counsel's office. So I'm a deputy county counsel. I have been working on our COVID response since March. I was in the EOC physically for a large chunk of that time, and then eventually transitioned, and I'm sitting in my home now, but still in regular communication with the people who still go in physically to that emergency operations center in the sheriff's office in San Jose. I have had many, many different roles within the EOC as we've spanned the length of the crisis. And at this moment, and for the past several months, what I've been doing is serving on the order interpretation team. What we do is answer questions from members of the public who are unsure about how to interpret either a county health officer order or directive or a state order or guidance document, and sometimes how those two things intersect and interact. So a whole bunch of familiarity with the orders themselves. And then I'm also involved in drafting new orders, drafting new directives, writing the FAQs on the website. So deeply embedded in that process. And I'm a good person, or my team, anyone on my team would be a good person to ask with questions about what an order means, or what a section of an order means, and how it applies to your business. I wanted to start today with a little bit of education, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and operating with the same information. Then I have an update, which I'm hopeful is going to be positive news for the people on this call. And then after that, I'm really interested in hearing from all of you. Any questions you have, any concerns you have, and definitely any ideas you have or suggestions for ways that orders could be changed or modified or lifted that would make it easier for you to run your operations. This is a really good time for me to hear directly from businesses the struggles on the ground and what we might be able to do to help you get from point A to point B. This is, obviously I won't be able to make any promises on this call about we're definitely going to be able to make that happen, or any particular suggestions, but I can promise you that I'll take all suggestions back to our leadership team and to Dr. Cody so that they can all think about them, process, weigh in, and we can see if we might be able to make any of these things happen. So that's where I'm at. I know Brian Darrow is also on the call.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks so much, Councilmember McKay, for setting this up, and thanks to the Chamber for setting it up. I'll be brief. I'm Brian Darrow. My normal job is working out of the County Executive's office, but for the last 6 or 7 months now, I've been working out of the EOC as a liaison officer, mostly working on communication with some of our key stakeholders, so elected officials, other public officials, and business leaders among them. And so my role today is really just an extra set of ears. I also, because I'm in the EOC every day, I do have a lot of chance to sort of provide and relay feedback to our health officer and her team. And so I'm just hoping to kind of hear, as Grace mentioned, what you all are facing, and we're really interested in ideas, as she mentioned, because as Councilmember McKay outlined, I think we know there's a lot of frustration around the indoor dining question, but even if, and we don't know what the future holds exactly for that, but I think just from a public health standpoint, even if outdoor or indoor dining is opened up, outdoor dining is still sort of the more safe operation. And so we've seen New York City kind of, even with their cold weather, try to expand their open restaurants program into the winter, which, where streets and sidewalks and other public spaces are being taken over, and they're trying to be strategic about heating those spaces. So, and I know there's a lot of creative ideas out there, but we'd certainly be interested in hearing what your experience is and how you're thinking about these things.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Mike.
Thank you very much, Councilmember McKay. And hello again, everybody. Christina, haven't seen you in an hour. Nice, nice to see you. I'm in my 10th year as the District 1 Supervisor, which includes South County. My 40 years of experience and ongoing is as a commercial and residential landlord. I have 4 restaurants that are tenants of mine, and I'm going to have vacancies for the first time this century next month. So I know exactly what's going on, even though I've given my tenants half rent off in May and in June, and I'm giving them half off again in October. That's the reality of what it is right now. This virus came to town. The state, the nation, the world wasn't prepared for it. We didn't have enough PPE in the beginning. We didn't have remdesivir in the beginning. We didn't know about treatment and oxygen and symptoms. Now all of that has changed. We're doing a much better job with treating people who contract COVID, but it's still here. The 2 weeks of 100-degree weather didn't kill off the virus. There's no reason to believe the winter, the cold weather will kill off the virus. We're following the state. We have to do what the state says. They moved us from purple to red a couple of weeks ago, but 70% of the state is still in purple. And when they moved us to red, I thought, okay, great, indoor dining now at 25%. But our public health officer, Dr. Cody, and several other public health officers in the state have said, even though the state allowed it, we don't believe it's the right thing to do at this time. I think most of you probably know that every Tuesday at noon, the state announces, as they did today, what color each of the 58 counties is in. And we were announced again today that we're in red. However, the credit that we receive for doing more testing, the more we test, the more credit we get. So I'm hoping, if the way we're trending, if you go to the county public health website, you'll see the great dashboards that they have, that are updated daily, that have more information than you could possibly comprehend. We are trending in the right direction. And I'm hoping another week or two of trending in the right direction and testing increasing and getting more credits will allow our restaurants to open up indoors. But before that happens, a plan has to come out from the public health office on how restaurants have to open indoors. And I can suggest to all of you and all the people you speak to, state has guidelines for how restaurants can open up indoors. So at the very least, know that we will require the state guidelines. And if my guess is anything right, we'll probably require a little more than the state guidelines. So if you want to start planning now, figure on doing at least what the state says must be done on the state website for restaurants to open indoors. That's number one. Number two, you can darn well count on eating inside will be stricter than eating outside. So whatever distances are used now, 6 feet from each other, or from centers of table, or 8 feet, or whatever the numbers are for outside, it's going to be stricter for inside. But I think what will be nice when we finally get to opening up inside at some level, we'll also have eating outside available. So it's not going to be going from outside to inside and outside's closed. It'll be outside and some degree of inside. But the only way we get there is if we continue to improve our statistics and continue to improve our testing. If we don't, the state will send us back to purple, and this whole thing will be moot. Because even if Dr. Cody wanted us to open up inside, and the state said no, we can't. So we've got a number of moving elements here. And what we need to get out there is a plan so all of the restaurant owners can know what will be required of them when they are allowed to open. But you know the very least that will be required will be what the state is requiring now and what we're requiring outside. And I'll end it at that, John, and be open to any questions.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, everybody from the county. I just want to say that we've seen a great advocate in Mike, who's really pushed at the county board of supervisor level to try to get our businesses open. So we do have somebody who is here to listen. So thank you very much, Mike. I'm going to move on to City Council Member Larry Carr. Do you have an introduction, opening statement? Or introduce yourself and tell us what you're here for.
You bet. Thanks, John. I want to thank John for organizing this, coming up with the idea of bringing us together, the Chamber and the Downtown Association for being partners, and the county for coming on board as well. Mike has been, I second everything John just said. Mike has been a terrific advocate, very transparent and open. He responds to our text messages in the middle of the night about things. So thanks for always being available to us, Mike. And Brian and Grace, if you guys can, both of you in creating opportunities for council members to learn about things that are going on, we greatly appreciate that. And if you could take that thanks back to both Dr. Cody's office and the county exec, we appreciate having the opportunity to learn more about public health issues that local government does not know about. We do not have our own, as you all know on this call, we do not have our own public health department. We rely on the county, and they've been a great partner with us. Just really quick, John, I in my private life, wearing a different hat, I work for the Albertsons companies. We own grocery stores here in Morgan Hill and in Santa Clara County. We're Safeway. And so I've been spending the last 6 months working with state, county, and local officials on how to keep our customers and our employees safe, and dealing with some of the similar regulations, but how they affect an essential business like a grocery store, and how we keep those open. And it has been an interesting, challenging, at times frustrating process, but knowing that there are good partners out there is always something that keeps us moving forward. I'm looking forward today to hearing some ideas and figuring out, as John and I worked earlier in the spring on some economic development plans for the city of Morgan Hill, finding ways that the city can be a good partner, and at the minimum, the ways that the city doesn't get in the way and slow down our restaurants from being able to do the things that they're going to need to do to stay alive as the weather starts getting colder. As things start opening up, the last thing we want is for City Hall to be the thing that slows anyone down. We've been, I think our city staff has been very proactive in not letting that happen. And again, John and I worked on some ideas that the council approved last spring that have sped some of that up as well. And now we're just in the next phase, and we have to just keep that going and keep that sort of that spirit alive of how we're going to do all this in partnership, and know that your local government is a partner with you and will not be a hindrance. So again, John, thanks for pulling this together. Looking forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, the Morgan Hill Downtown Association, Chamber of Commerce and City, for putting this together too. So I'm going to move right over to the introductions. We'll continue with introductions. Then we're going to circle back. We're going to have Grace give us a report, and then we'll have the Chamber give us an updating report, and also the Downtown Association. But for now, I'm going to continue with introductions with Christina Turner. Where'd you go? There you are.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Good afternoon, everyone. I am pleased that we're all together. And as you heard, we want to just be supportive in our city role and do what we can to step out of the way so that we can get restaurants open, so that we can get restaurants earning revenue, which of course for us means, sales tax dollars. And so we're in this together, and we're here to help. We're very fortunate to have our county partners, both at the elected level as well as the staff level. Brian is a rock star in responding to emails. I feel like between him and others that, we have people that we can reach out to so we can get questions answered. And so, continue to send questions our way, and we're here to help.
Thank you. And we have City Attorney Don Larkin.
Yeah, Don.
Now I can unmute. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your questions. I also wanted to let everybody know Councilmember Martinez Beltran is also here listening. We have more than 2 council members in attendance, so that's why she's got her camera off and she's sort of in hiding down there so that we don't inadvertently run into a Brown Act violation. But and also we're not going to be talking today about specific legislation that comes before the city council, but more on ideas of things that you think can help you out.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Don. We have Edith Ramirez. Did we unmute you?
Thank you, everybody. It's good to see everybody here today. Looking forward to supporting the conversation. We've been working closely with our businesses, so we're here to see how we can help or get out of the way, as Councilmember Carr mentioned.
Okay, and that was Economic Development Director for the City of Morgan Hill, Edith Ramirez. Thank you very much, Edith. And we have the Director of Community Services, I think, if I got the title right, Chris Guillaume.
Actually, that was my old title, Public Services Director. So everything that's infrastructure related is my job and operations for the city. So helping economic development with things that have happened downtown. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you. We have Brittany Sherman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brittany Sherman, CEO President, Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. Many of you I've worked with already in multiple capacities, so nice to be here in support of our restaurants.
Great, thank you. And David Dindak.
Let's see, Dave.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm with you now. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to discuss the predicament of our restaurants and how we navigate operations in the future. My name is David Dindak. I'm the president of the Downtown Association and owner with my wife of Bubbles, and looking forward to a very good conversation.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I was going to give the restaurant operators a chance to introduce themselves, but what I want to do is keep this moving. My goal is to get you out of here at 4. I heard there's something going on at the national level at 4 o'clock, so some of you might be disappearing. I will stick around as late as you would like. So what I'm going to ask all the panelists to do is in the chat, put the best contact email address or phone number for you in the chat, so that at the end, if we don't get all our questions answered, we can reach out to you. Now, for someone like Grace, you might want to just let Brian take the questions, because I know Brian's been very good at taking all of the emails for the county and making sure they get to the right place. But if each one of you in the chat room could go ahead and post your best contact information, that would be greatly appreciated. At this point, I'm going to now open this up to Grace Kuba, who has, I think, some good news and just good information in general.
Thank you very much. I do hope it's good news. We'll get there in a second, but first I just want to make sure that we all have the same landscape, like I said in my introduction, just so that we're all working from the same information. There are multiple layers of orders operating, and as Supervisor Wasserman alluded, the stricter order is always going to control. So there are going to be times when the county health officer may want to lift a restriction, and it may not be possible, because if the state is stricter than the county, that's the rule. That said, the state rules are really a floor, and that's whatever the state says we're at, that's the least restrictive we must be. We are allowed explicitly by the state to impose extra restrictions on top of that. And Dr. Cody has done that consistently throughout the entire COVID process, just to make sure that we are taking steps that are based on sound public health science and the best science and knowledge available at the time. So just quickly, the orders in play, there's a county order. Our risk reduction order was released on July 2nd. That has a lot of rules and restrictions that are generally applicable across the county. So businesses have to submit a social distancing protocol to the county. For example, there are density limitations for indoor facilities, things like that. There On top of the county order are a bunch of directives, mandatory directives, which contain more specific rules for specific industries. And obviously the most relevant one for this conversation is there's an outdoor dining directive that regulates restaurants, bars, cafes, any facility that's serving food and wants to open for outdoor dining. At the same time, the state has an order that was released on August 28th, was the most recent order. As part of that order, they also released the blueprint, which is the 4-tiered system, again, which Supervisor Wasserman alluded to, the purple, red, orange, yellow tiers. And we're moving through that based on our data and the benchmarks that the state has set out. The blueprint itself will impose some restrictions like the 25% capacity for restaurants in red. And then on top of those, the state has individual guidance documents for different industries, similar to our mandatory directives. There's just a lot of documents you have to look at to know exactly what the rules are for your industry. And it can be pretty unwieldy, which is sort of why my team exists, is if you're not sure how these things interact, please let us know. We're happy to interpret for you and make sure that you have the right read of the orders. For restaurants, the state actually has multiple guidance documents. I'm not sure exactly why. They were all released on the same day, but there's one that seems a little bit more tailored to outdoor dining and one that seems a little bit more tailored to indoor dining, although they're not explicit about it. So if you are looking to open your indoor dining operations eventually, if you're doing some planning for that eventuality, I would look at the restaurants guidance document. So among all of these guidance documents and orders and restrictions, you always have to take the strictest one. And that is why indoor dining is still closed in this county, because our July 2nd risk reduction order in section 13 closes indoor dining across the county. That order is still in place. So even though the state has moved us into a less restrictive tier that would allow some limited indoor dining, our order is stricter, so it controls on that point. I just want to say that, you know, I haven't been on a call with a specific group of people before, but I've spoken with other groups of businesses and of restaurant owners and people, you know, who are in a position where they're operating outdoor facilities right now, where they'd really prefer to be operating an indoor facility. And I just want you to know that we heard that, we processed that information, and even though the science at this point, at this moment in time, does not support, according to Dr. Cody's analysis, does not support opening indoor dining, we do really want to make sure that our restaurants are able to get through the winter, right? The winter is coming, there's going to be more rain, it will be colder, there will be more wind, and the outdoor facility definition that was in place was a little bit hard to work with in those settings where it's raining or it's windy. The old definition, which is in the current outdoor dining directive, so that has to be updated, but this is, as of this moment, as of yesterday afternoon actually, this is the operative definition. We are expanding the number of sides that you can put onto the facility, with the idea being you can create a better space for trapping heat if you've got heaters, you can create a better wind block if it's really windy, you can create more rain cover. So the old definition that was in place until yesterday afternoon, you could only have one side on the facility. So if you had a canopy, say, that you were putting over your outdoor space, it could only have one side. That was true regardless of whether there was a top on the space or not. If you had a totally open space, it could still only have one wall. So maybe you had a patio that was right up against a building. That building would be your one wall, and you couldn't put any other covers on it, or you put a top on it, but no other sides. This was difficult to work with for a lot of places that were concerned about this shift to the winter. The new definition, which I sent to John, and I believe it may have been circulated, it's also posted on our FAQ page on the county's COVID-19 website. Our new definition takes into account the fact that some places are going to want to cover and some places won't. Some places might prefer more sides versus a cover. And the new rule really is just that you need two faces open. So if you don't have a top, you only need one side open. If you want to put a top on your space, you have to have two sides open. But even just having two sides open is a lot more protective from wind and rain, because you can create kind of a corner with a top to trap the heat. That's our idea anyway. And that was our attempt to create sort of a middle ground between indoor operations, which really do not at this point allow for the appropriate amount of airflow to make it safe, versus a totally exposed outdoor facility that's just not workable when people are trying to eat food that might blow away in the wind. So please look at the FAQ language for the exact details, and I'm happy to field any questions about it. But we're really hopeful that as people try and play with that new definition and see how it works, we're really hopeful that it opens a lot of opportunities for spaces that would have been completely unworkable before. That's my update. I'm happy to field questions about it now or later. Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you though.
Okay. If I could, I see a blue hand. I'm not sure what that means. Mike, does that mean you are raising your hand?
I'm raising my blue hand. This is a Zoom meeting.
If I could ask, what I would like to do is ask everybody to keep their questions until after our last presentation. Does that sound fair?
I just wanted to ask Grace if she put that, how that word, what she just said, was distributed to the industry.
It has not been yet. That's a great question, because this was just yesterday afternoon, it was finalized and posted. Our plan, because all restaurants in the county are permitted by DEH, by the Department of Environmental Health, they've got contact information for all of those facilities. So there's already a process in the works to get that on a mailer or a flyer or something to get it sent
public
out.
knowledge, so all the chamber members here and the economic vitality people, they can all put the word out as of now.
It's up on the FAQ page. We're in a little bit of an awkward moment because the outdoor dining directive, which has rules for outdoor dining facilities, contains the old definition that we haven't updated that one yet. But the operative definition as of now is the one on the FAQ page.
So Brittany can grab it and distribute it.
Yes.
Okay. And Brittany does have it. She's probably distributing it. And thank you for that blue hand, Mike. I thought you were going to break into playing some kind of a tube or something like that. Okay, so thank you very much, Grace. We'll come back to you with more questions. What I'd like to do is move quickly on to Brittany with the updates that you've been getting through the chamber.
Sure. Thanks for giving me a moment, John. Kind of what most of our advocacy and efforts have been in conjunction with the Silicon Valley Chamber Coalition, which is a gathering of chamber CEOs basically from Palo Alto down to Watsonville. So we convene, take stances on issues together. The restaurants has been something that we have been pretty outspoken about. We did a press conference mid-September and got a lot of great media coverage from that. Had about 4 or 5 of our Morgan Hill restaurants participate, which was fantastic. Thank you for that. We also, about 2 weeks ago, invited some of our restaurants to come to the public comment section of the county supervisors meeting and had some of them kind of voice for 3 minutes their concerns, their struggles, how we can move forward. In addition to that, CEO of the Gilroy Chamber, Mark Turner, actually put together this 5-point reopening plan that we've all gotten behind. So that's kind of everything that we're doing right now. The main questions I'm getting from the restaurants, of course, how do we cover as the weather starts getting cooler? B, what are the guidelines around heaters being inside those covered spaces? I know that's something the fire department was looking at. To my knowledge, we still don't have an exact answer about where that goes.
Okay, I've got that written down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And then David, I think David Dindak, you were going to, there you are, speak on Downtown Association matters.
I'm back on.
There you go.
You're muted. David, you're muted.
You're muted again, David.
Now you're good.
Okay, that's the host. The host keeps on telling me that I'm muted. Okay. I had an opportunity to speak with many of the restaurants prior to the meeting, just to get a temperature reading of where they're at and where they've been and where they're going. And you are likely going to hear this, what I'm going to share with you from the restaurants over and over again. But we all feel that this is something, once again, that you need to hear loud and clear. you know, we hear about how the downtown is alive again and outdoor diners are everywhere and people see 10, 12, 15 tables during lunch and Thursday through Saturday. Many of those tables were already there pre-COVID. But if you look in the windows, there's another 15 to 20 tables empty. And we're all struggling. You know, during the SIP, takeout and curbside, when that was in place, operating is at about 10%, is what I'm hearing from the restaurants. Their operation was at about 10%. Then when we got to open for outdoors, the end of the second quarter through the third, revenues are still down 40 to 50%. I mean, I heard that wide as I walked up and down the street, and there's no end in sight. So we know that their consideration is Mr. Wasserman and Ms. Kuba said for 25%. That'll help a little bit, but in most of the places I was, that's a matter of 4 to 5 tables. 50% would really help a whole bunch more, but we need it to be open fully. No one expected this to be this long. One restaurant owner I talked to, he spent $3,000 on a tarp to get it through the summer, not thinking about, holy Moses, we're going to have winter and fall coming on. Now he's going to be purchasing another $6,000 tent that's rain resistant. Personally, at our establishment at Bubbles, overall, our customers, our patrons are trying to support all the business downtown. They're enjoying the outdoor dining. But as we talk to people, once it gets cold, man, they're not going to be wanting to come out as much. That's soon going to be upon us. And there's also rumors that we're going to be shut down. All the restaurants are like, are we going to be shut down? I don't know, but I got this call, and I'll let you know when I know. Takeout and curbside is not a successful business model for almost all of the eateries downtown. Staff hours are being cut considerably because positions aren't there. Many of the restaurants along the corridor, they don't have the ability to set up canopies. Even those that can, with heat lamps and awnings, some of them are deterred by what the return on investment is going to be on spending thousands of dollars on equipment and supplies that they may not need next summer. And there's also the question of the rules for things like awnings and permits that are required. So one of the things that was mentioned to me, and I'll just mention to you, we know the city's strapped, we know the county's strapped, but it'd be great to have some kind of financial support. I don't know where you'd get it, but that's what was brought to me. Not just for enhancing decor, but just simply being able to help us purchase the critical equipment and supplies that we need to stay in business for operating outdoors come winter and fall. One of the places I talked to is they're considering shutting down for a few months during the winter, hoping that things will get better by spring. Another one, I asked him and he said, I don't know what we're going to do. So, you know, for a large part of this is looking to you guys for some direction on where we can go and what we can do. Specifically to our local representatives here, now with the street side dining, lining the corridor, traffic speed has become a big concern for the business owners, the customers, the employees. It would only take a sneeze for someone to veer off and into a barrier or a fence. So some of the thoughts that came up during conversations that I had for it was to change that Monterey Road traffic pattern. One was the lane diet. Another was closure on the weekends. Another was full closure. Another was activating side streets for dining. And then the last was lowering speed, maybe to 15 to 20. I brought these ideas up at other meetings, but that's before we knew that this was just going to go more and more and more. And so we'd like you to seriously consider, you know, some of these options, even maybe at least the lowering of the speed limit of Monterey Road. Monterey Road is very complex. We have wineries, we have restaurants lining both sides of the street. So there's constantly people going back and forth. It's not like your typical, 4-lane street. We've got people back and forth into the nighttime. And so I don't know if this 85 percentile rule that I was told about would really apply, and if we could maybe change that somehow by petition or something like that, is the same as with the lane diet thing. Something else that was brought to me yesterday that I didn't notice was most of the lampposts and the twinkle lights are coming on around 7:30, dark by then, hard to see people crossing a street. So we're asking that the timers be adjusted to turn on at the latest, maybe 6 o'clock, especially with the time change closing. In closing, I had a few owners that they didn't come to the call today because they felt that there wouldn't be any change. But I know, I've been on many meetings with you guys, and I know that you're listening. I know you have the best interest, our best interest at your heart. We need some relief. We need to open indoors soon, you guys. For the most part, we're mom and pop venues down here, and we're not just supporting ourselves, but we're supporting staff that's depending upon supporting their families as well. We don't have a lot of ideas. We're doing all we can with our heaters and our canopies and all those things. But I know come wintertime, there's things that we're not thinking about that we're looking to you, our leaders, to help us with. That's pretty much it as far as that, what I wanted to present from what I've learned from other restaurants. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, if I could bring them in, or does somebody want to comment on anything I've said?
Well, let's do this. I've got several questions. I've collected some from a couple from Brittany and a couple others from you. If we could, I think I promised you that you could start with your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and follow through with that. And then I'm going to bounce back and take a few questions, either directly from Brittany or the ones I wrote down. So go ahead, David.
Okay, so there's two that seem to be the most common. There is thought of another COVID surge, but that may not happen. Given the current COVID number trends, and should those trends continue, Shorty Health Department analysts have shared thoughts on when full indoor dining can return. So if that is, when is that?
Grace, do you have a crystal ball?
I do not have a crystal ball.
You guys have statistics. You guys pay people to have statistics. You hear all these statistics from everywhere. You got to have some kind of inkling. And I have to share it. I was going to say if you told me that you have to kill me, but I would share that.
Well, so what I can tell you is that this is a request that comes up from many different sectors. People really want they want sort of hard numbers. They want benchmarks, sort of like what the state has provided in its blueprint. So that's something that we've heard. We have communicated that to our leadership, and I will certainly bring it back again. At this point, that's not something that we're able to provide because, Dr. Cody and her public health leadership team, there's no set of metrics that you can provide that's going to capture the entire picture. The whole public health picture is informed by so many different pieces of information. And we really, really don't want to be in a position where we say, okay, if we hit this number in this metric, we're going to open things up. And then we hit it, and then actually something else has happened and we have to backtrack. That would be probably worst case scenario and just so bad for morale, and also for businesses that have invested in reopening in a certain way, and then we tell them they can't anymore. So at this point, there's interest in keeping some flexibility in when things are lifted. At the same time, I hear you. I've heard other people, even today, other people have made the same request, and we recognize, it provides a roadmap. It shows you sort of how you're getting from A to B to have those metrics. So I will absolutely bring that back to the public health leadership team.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, Grace covered it, but that we all who are interacting with it for one thing we've heard too, and so that's definitely not lost on Dr. Cody, and we very much understand where you're coming from with that. So we'll reiterate that one more time.
Okay, thank you. Then one more. This is rather contentious, but I got it from two people, old people like me. So where would one find the science that supports that indoor dining is the cause of high numbers, which is why indoor dining can't happen? And I'm going to ask this as well, because I was asked this. And how does COVID know the difference between indoor dining and shoulder-to-shoulder protests by hundreds? The restaurants feel we are very, very sanitized, you guys. I mean, I don't know if you come through our places down here, but we're working overtime trying to keep everything sanitized and clean and separate. And two of the people that talked to me or I spoke with, they're looking for the science that supports restaurants are a cause or a reason why we can't be open indoors.
So David, I'm going to actually say that that is kind of one of those big questions. I think we're here as a working group to kind of solve what we can. That one, Brian or Grace, if you can, or somebody, if somebody has the information, can get it to David, that would be very helpful. I don't see a resolution to some of the other things, but I think the statement is clearly made, so I do appreciate that. What we do want to do is that I think we know most everybody on the call, and everybody here is a great community member. We want to make sure we don't put anybody on the defensive. What we're looking for is, we're looking for explanations. We're looking for concerns. We're looking for the good ideas that can come out of this group. So I'd like to continue in that spirit. And I think, Brittany, you had, I'm going to go back to you because you presented a question that you didn't get to ask.
Yeah, John, I had a couple questions. I do want to be sensitive to the fact that we do have some of the actual restaurant owners on the call. They probably have a lot of the similar questions I have. So I'm happy. I see Ray's hand up right now. I mean, I'm happy to forgo my time and give them the time to jump in and talk.
Okay, great. Now this is why we're here. So thank you very much. Let's go ahead and do that. I think we have Ray on the line. And let's see.
Ray, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's participation, particularly the city council people, the county people. It's been great information, so I definitely appreciate that support. I think this is probably the first time that I realize that those folks actually have our back and are looking for our best interests. So that being said, in reality, one of the things that I'm always faced with is having to educate the public. So when customers come in, I mean, it's literally person by person or table by table. When they come in, what the rules are. I think it would be helpful if the county or any other sort of official or authorized person also educates the customer. I'm not a policymaker. I'm not a lawmaker, but I'm oftentimes having to educate, each and every customer. This is what we can and cannot do. This is what you can and you cannot do, etc. So my comment or my question is that if you, and again, this is an idea, John, you and I talked privately one-on-one, and this would be my idea and contribution is that can there be some public notice that could educate the public on what their behaviors are or cannot be when they're out and about, whether they're shopping, going to restaurants, etc. Just a public notice that way. That is what I think would be pretty helpful, because the results sometimes, not all the time, most people do understand, but sometimes people roll their eyes, they get upset or otherwise frustrated, and that's not what we want when they're going out and having a dining experience. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Grace and Brian, I'm going to ask you first. I think I've read every single thing you guys have published, and I slept quite well several nights. Is there, but I think Ray asked a good question. Is there something that you can put, a fact sheet on a piece of paper that really addresses the public's behavior, because everything seems to be directed inward towards businesses and all that, and then their obligation to inform their customers. But maybe, could there be that document that Ray mentioned?
I actually think this is a really interesting point, and a good point, because we don't want to create a situation where the restaurant is, customers become frustrated with the restaurant because of rules that the county or the state impose. That's really not fair. And so I think that, yeah, we should be looking at ways we can take on that responsibility. One thing that is coming immediately to mind is we have a really talented public information team, and they do TV ads and billboards and all kinds of stuff. And they also are really good at putting together flyers and things that can be posted. So I'm wondering if, some sort of poster or flyer directed specifically at customers at dining establishments, and say sort of, here's what this restaurant is required to do. And, we couldn't go through the whole thing because all the rules are quite long, but we could do some the big bullet points. And then here's what you're required to do as a customer. Is that something, is that sort of along the lines of what Ray, you were thinking?
Yes, that's exactly right. Spot on. Perfect.
I'll take that back to our team. I think that that's something we could certainly work on. And then, you know, it would just be a matter of if things do change, if a new order comes out, a new directive comes out, you know, we'd have to make sure that that gets updated as well, so that restaurants have up-to-date information to post. But I think that's a great idea. Thank you for that.
I was just going to share, I'm in regular contact with the PIO folks from the county, and I would agree it's a very talented team. That might already exist. There's an awful lot of information and graphics and very simple things. We, the city, share them out on a weekly basis, but there might be some things that already exist that could be used at the restaurants if they'd like to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. And so it's helpful.
Brian, you're breaking up a little bit for me.
Thinking about it sounds like it's like really making it to the general public, not just to the business.
Yeah, Brian, you broke.
Oh, sorry.
Up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you want to try repeating?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just saying it's helpful to know that Ray wants that a flyer in particular is what would be helpful, because as Maureen mentioned, our PIO team generates a lot of material that is focused on the general public, not just the business community, to try to educate them on the rules. So we'll take that back. That's helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's greatly appreciated, because whether it was intentional or not, we've actually turned our restaurant business operators into the enforcement agencies, and that would really be a helpful tool for them. Okay, do we have another hand up?
Yes, go ahead.
Just real quickly, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to go fast on this. Just want to offer to the county that we, the city, are working with the chamber on launching a Buy Local campaign. And we were thinking already to fold in a Be Safe campaign alongside that. And we're looking at various platforms, kiosks, banners in downtown and other places. So if the county has any resources as far as your education campaign, we can combine resources and really come out with a strong message in downtown. And we can take this offline. I know there's other restaurateurs that want to chime in with their thoughts, questions, and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Nick, I see Nick has a question.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good.
There you are.
Maybe I do want to direct this comment to both Grace, Brian, and to Mike. And first, let me state by saying I fully appreciate just the gravity of decisions that are being made, and I appreciate your support and advocacy for all the months you put into this, trying to balance the quality of life, right, to economic viability. I can only imagine the grand challenges to that. I'm still concerned that what we're not seeing as far as proactive response is some direct actions that we can be taking today that's going to help us tomorrow. And so I want to send this message, hopefully with a gracious perspective behind it, but with all the brilliant minds that we have circling this issue now for months. If we are looking at some more restrictive guidelines for in-house dining, I'm having a hard time understanding why those guidelines in the roadmap we can't start demonstrating what that looks like today. So as a small business, we can start preparing for that. My concern is that both at a county, at state, and a national level, we're just deferring accountability to the other agencies, and we're just not taking action on steps that we can take today, again, that's going to help us tomorrow. So I'm concerned about the comment that John, you made, and I think you're absolutely right. If in-house dining is finally allowed as far as access, and even at 25%, if we have further restrictions to that, then that percent becomes meaningless, because those numbers are going to go down even more. So I think that the discussion that we have this afternoon is vitally important, because we're going to be living with a combination of outdoor and indoor dining for the next 18, 24 months at minimum. And we're going to have to put up some applied knowledge that's going to allow business and restaurant owners to understand how to fully affect their change in their model or close down. And the sooner we can make those decisions, the better off we're all going to be. So I think I'm sending out a grand challenge to Grace. I can only imagine your job as interpreter. And that's a concern alone, because if we have to have a division of interpretation to understand understand the complexity of the guidelines, then we're missing the boat. Right? This can be a more simplified process if we take a hard look at that. So if we don't think constructively outside of the box and be more proactive on what we can be doing tomorrow with the brilliant minds that we have then we're missing all of the knowledge that we've learned over the past 3 or 4 months. So I apologize. I know I'm standing on a soapbox here, but the reality is our profit margins are so thin at this point. If they continue to further erode, over 75% of the small business restaurants in California will close down based on the last surveys I saw from the independent restaurant associations. So we have to stop deferring accountability. We have to stop looking at the layers in between the various agencies, and we have to get to some common ground where we're using the applied knowledge we have on the phone today to be able to take actions for tomorrow. Because along with the beautification and along with the other things that we're doing, it's simply not going to increase the profit margin that's going to allow us to move forward. So I'm sending a plea out here at this point that we really have to get down to basics, and we have to come up with a simplified plan that's going to make sense, that's going to be realistic, and it's going to be scalable for every business owner to be able to accommodate. And while I'm on the soapbox, I'm going to ask for one more plea. I would really like to understand the difference in the science between individuals that can walk into, say, a grocery store at the order of magnitude and volume they have versus going into a small restaurant. There has to be a degree of confidence that restaurant owners can manage the protocols if we understand them and we have advanced warning and we can take action. So that's my plea. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak.
Okay, well stated, Nick.
Let me say one more thing, John. Having said that, I realize that I'm a part of the problem as well. So I think what we're offering here is we have a lot of applied knowledge right here on this phone today that can really help, but we have to know our voice is going to make a difference, and we're going to see actions actually started in the very near future.
And this is where we're starting, and Mike, I think you've been wanting to respond to this. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And Nick, I totally understand your frustration, your sympathy. 2 hours ago, I got off a lengthy phone call with James Williams, who's our county counsel. And I said to James, I'm going into this meeting. And like I've heard for months, the restaurant industry wants to know what will be expected of them when they're finally allowed to open inside. Because we can't tell them on Monday that you can open on Friday and that you need plywood and acrylic and paint and this, that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they can't find contractors, they can't find suppliers, they can't find whatever to make it all happen. And it'd be a real shame to be allowed to be open on Friday, but not able to get your stuff done till the following Monday. So James, he's a very, very wise person, especially when you consider how young he is, but he's the smartest man I know. And he said, Mike, and I opened with this, Nick, he said, at the very least, the county will require what the state requires, and those requirements are on the state's website right now. I can tell you, if I was betting on something, and I would have thought the A's would have won today, but they didn't.
Right.
If I was betting on something, I would bet, obviously by law, we have to be as restrictive. So use that as your bottom. Start making improvements, modifications, layouts, plans, whatever, based on what the state has in place now. That's for number one. Number two, there's several counties that are open right now. Their PHO said yes to indoor dining. Other counties, I think Alameda, for instance, does not allow indoor dining. So check with the San Franciscos that are going to be opening, the San Mateos that are opening, and see what their public health officer, did they go with the state's rules, or did they say you have to go a bit stricter? If the state said 25%, did they say 20? If the state said 10 feet, did they say 12? And I would use those, because at the very worst, you'll be overprotected and you can relax those. But I'm very concerned that when our county does allow indoor dining, which I'm hoping and praying, hope it happens next month, that when that happens, the demand for whatever is going to be required, and again, it may be sheets of acrylic between tables. I have no idea. I go into some places and there is acrylic in front of me and the person, and I go into some places and there's not. I go into some places and there's pieces of acrylic and there's a hole that I hand things through, And in other places, I have to reach around the damn acrylic and hand them my change for my tacos. Okay? It's different everywhere, but you have the state as the bottom. And then you've got other counties that are either following the state or have imposed something a little bit more. Remember, we've got 58 public health officials, each of which are MDs. And it's sometimes there's 20 different opinions.
I'm with you. I understand that,
Okay.
and I deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So let me just interject. Let me give you some reality, Mike. I don't mean to cut you off, but we don't have that much time left. We're planning right now for potentially 15 more seats if we go to in-house dining. If that 6 feet gets extended to 8 or 10 feet, well, that's going to be less than 15 seats. It may not be worth opening in-house dining, which means we're going to fully have to be on outdoor dining. So we have to get real here. I mean, someone finally has to understand that we have lives and families here at stake at this point, and we're doing everything we can to pre-plan, but we're not getting enough information from the county and from the state and from our government to be able to say, here's how you have to act. So you can tell I'm at my end of my line today. It's been a very rough day trying to balance out the issues that are at hand, to stay stable and to stay proactive as far as renewal. But I know we've got brilliant minds at this, and we have counties that are open. So we must be able to take lessons learned from them and start to apply those.
Nick, let me finish off, because I can see our Chair McKay. Okay, he's in charge of managing. So you and I need to end this right now. But what it comes down to is the law says the county cannot do less than what the state requires.
I understand.
Okay, my concern is that when the state allows 25% and the rains come, the restaurants will still go under.
Right.
Okay, but if the state's at 25, Dr. Cody cannot say 50. And this is the problem we've got. It has to start at the top, whether that's the governor, assembly, senate, or whatever. The state public health officers got to raise the bar so that we can at least do that. Maybe 25%, 45 days from now when the weather's cold, with inside, outside, and only 2 faces open and heating underneath, as Grace said, maybe people won't bleed as much as quickly. But it can't go on, and we don't know when the vaccine's coming. But you have to realize the county cannot do more than what the state allows. My concern, and what I voice with state and assembly people, is that the state is not allowing restaurants to survive. And don't even get me started on estheticians and bars. I'm done, John.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm sorry, I know I've got some more questions, and I think one of the things that this really reinforces with me is this conversation is not over. We need to keep it going, and we need to keep those, some of you, Mike and Grace and Brian, we need to keep you close, because we need to continue this conversation. When we started this, when we came up with the idea for this meeting, it was because the conversation was not taking place anywhere that we knew of. There was no coordinated conversation, and some restaurants were not even beginning to think about it. So now we're starting to see the results of restaurants that are thinking, they're planning, we're seeing the concern come out. So I think we need to keep this conversation going. We're not going to solve this today. Thank you, Mike, for the answer, and thank you, Nick, for expressing that. Tiffany, I believe you had a question. Is there a way to get you on the line? Could you unmute, Tiffany?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. You're on.
Hi. Thanks, John. I'm Tiffany Morales, and I'm with the Live Lovely Owl Hospitality Portfolio here in Granada Theater in downtown Morgan Hill. First of all, I want to say thank you to the city and city officials, for always, of course, backing the businesses. We definitely appreciate that. But as Nick has already kind of vocalized, I'm going to piggyback around that conversation of being proactive instead of reactive. It's very important that we, as businesses and small businesses that we are able to go ahead and adjust and adapt and evolve. However, obviously, there's a lot of investment that comes from us as small businesses to purchase these tents and, build our business into the winter months and, get ready for what's to come. performing, at a 25% occupancy from most of these small businesses is, it's not going to make them survive during the winter. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, we can't hold our breath on the state or the county, no offense. We definitely need to do what we can to play our parts. And, one thing that the city has always been great about is protecting the small businesses. So what I would like to ask for the city is to, you guys be the proactive ones. You guys, instead of being the reactive ones, right? You guys go ahead and help us small businesses out by maybe slowing down downtown, but I think it needs to be more than that. I think we need to take tents into the streets and close down to one lane on each side, because our businesses are throughout the downtown. I think we need to create more real estate for our small businesses. If we're losing indoor dining seats and capacity, then we take it to the streets. We build these big structured tents. Like, no offense to Prova down the street here, but their tent is not going to survive during a little windstorm, much less rain. So we need to do what we can to provide the small businesses with the tools and the resources they need for them to be sustainable into these winter months. I think that is the end goal. I think that is what we all need to do. I think we also need to take a walk downtown and see what areas do have limited capacity with sidewalks, because yes, we are very grateful and thankful for the opportunity of going into the parklets, which is a phenomenal job by the city, but we're very limited in certain sidewalks, like First Street, for example, Second Street. There's very limited space. I think the other thing we have to look at is some of these big, huge trees that we have all the way down. Oh, I shouldn't be the one to speak to trees, but I'm speaking to other small businesses where there's trees that are taking up some of the real estate in front of the restaurants. They're losing some of the outdoor dining because of that. So I think I would like to turn to all of our city and city officials for you guys to go ahead and once again, do what you can to go ahead and help support these small businesses through these winter months, and see if we can go ahead and bring it to the table of having the conversation of going down to one lane on each side.
Okay, Tiffany, so it sounds like you're making some requests. So if I could just distill it, what I'm hearing is you would like for us to manage traffic better, slow it down, maybe get it quieter. You would like more real estate. That makes a lot of sense. You want some real estate, whether that means that we reduce traffic on Monterey Road by a lane, or find some other means, maybe close a side street. As mentioned earlier, that we could actually maybe close the downtown on weekends. Basically revisit a discussion that we started. I think you're asking us to go back and talk about it again because we've been prompted by these ensuing conditions to look at it again. And that's what I'm hearing. Is that about right?
Yes, that is correct, John. I just went to Palo Alto on Sunday, and, University Avenue is closed down both ways because they have done what they can to support the small businesses and all those restaurants who have taken to the streets. It's actually really nice because it's provided really, easy walk flow, for people to go ahead and walk in the middle of the street to go find a restaurant, for them to dine at. So I think we need to look at different, cities and what they have done to be successful for, their businesses to be sustainable. Because at the end of the day, the city doesn't want for businesses to close down. The city wants the business to stay here, right? So we're in this together, right? It's not us against you. It's we are in this together, and we got to do whatever we can to team up together to make this happen.
Well said.
Yeah, a very, very clear message. I was in Mountain View. They have also closed the streets. I think what we could do at the city level, I'm not speaking for everyone, and that is that we could use the support of the business communities as we move forward and possibly bring these out as discussions. So thank you very much, Tiffany. I see Brittany, I see Rosie, I believe, and I thought I saw Dan. So Brittany, do you want to go next?
I'm just going to jump in super quick because I want to piggyback off of what Tiffany said. Whatever happens with the road diet downtown, whether we close the streets, I still think the long-term question is how often, like Nick said, how long are people going to sit outside when it's freezing to eat? We still need to address the issue of how do we kind of keep the heat in? Can we have heat lamps out there? That, I think, changes how long we're able. I mean, given the extra real estate's fantastic. I totally agree with Tiffany. However, we need to kind of go the next step and say, great, the extra real estate we can get in the next month is fantastic. How do we then extend that and make people comfortable into a December, January timeframe?
Okay, thank you. And that was actually the genesis, was how do we use the tools that we had, canopies, tents, to stay warm and dry. So that's an expansion on that. Does everybody mind staying till 4:30? Because I think we've got enough here to go another 20 minutes. If so, then does somebody have an answer for Brittany, or can you actually be the messenger to take that back to see if we can start to, look for solutions at the county level?
I don't have an answer to it, but I can definitely take it back. And I actually don't know who this is. It's a fire marshal question, I think, but I'm not exactly sure who makes that decision in Morgan Hill.
Yeah.
Dawn, I unmuted you.
Thank you. I saw that I was muted. I was trying to answer, but yeah, that's a fire marshal question. That's not a county question, and we will take it back to our fire. I think our fire marshal already has the question, but we'll take it back to him.
Thanks, Tom.
And that really ties into something that I'm just going to throw in there, and that is that you say 50% coverage. Could that be walls that are half height and have 4 walls half height, or some variation on that? So could we use percentage instead of sides in our calculations?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that we have thought about it exactly that way, because if you read the full FAQ, it allows for partitions or barriers either around the space or within the space, but they can only be 4 feet high. So this is really, we were thinking a lot more about the sort of the vertical 50%, or I'm sorry, the horizontal space being 50% open. You could have 4-foot walls around the entire facility, and we wouldn't count any walls at all, because if they're not over 4 feet, we're not going to count them. But in terms of going over 4 feet, as soon as you're 4 feet 1 inch, that's a wall. So, I think we were thinking more about sides, and but I think I need to think about that a little bit more and how the math works out. You're certainly able to open, you could have, if every single side was half open, that would be 50% of your perimeter, and that would be just fine. It doesn't have to be the full side and the full side. So you can be creative with that. I think the height is a little bit different, because we have set a limit on how tall a partition or a barrier can be before it counts as a wall.
Okay, great, thank you. I didn't mean to hijack that. Rosie, you had a question? Have you been unmuted yet?
I pressed the little button. Okay. Yeah. So I like what Tiffany was saying. I was going to say the same thing. I think we need to utilize our street. I think we should close it, not just one lane. If we could have a consistent tarp, a community tarp that went across all of Monterey, maybe going from the sides and meeting in the middle, because just to create some consistency, we're getting a little crazy on Monterey, I think, a little bit. I'm wondering if we do have indoor dining, can we just have all the restaurants open their doors and windows and have fans to create circulation? Do something a little bit, more proactive like that. And then lastly, can we, would it be helpful if we made it mandatory for all the restaurants to get testing and of their employees? Those are my questions.
Okay. Who would, Grace, is this you? Is this?
I can jump in, and I'll ask Brian to maybe help as well. As far as testing goes, we are already recommending strongly that all essential workers, including wait staff and employees at restaurants, be tested at least once a month. That's not a requirement, but it is a strong recommendation, and just for their safety. I think that, strong and strict testing regimens is something I'd certainly want to take back to the leadership team. I think it's an interesting idea if that's something that you think the restaurant community could work with. If that would be feasible, if employees would be willing to undergo regular testing, more regular than once a month, that's something we can ask about.
And would that help us? And would that action help our cause?
I think anything that sort of shows us that the restaurant community is willing to play ball and to take these safety measures is helpful to the cause. I don't know if that's going to be an exact. I don't know exactly which levers are going to be the ones that work out, but it's helpful for us to know all the levers that are available. If that makes sense. And as to your point about fans, that is a good point. fans are not a substitute for having a space actually open to the outdoors. So our outdoor facility definition, you'll still need to meet that actual definition to be considered outdoors. But certainly in any indoor space, for example, in the kitchen, that's probably indoors even right now with an outdoor dining operation. If you've got a fan that is pulling in or blowing, moving air from outdoors to indoors, that's a great idea, and we fully support it. You don't want to have a fan that's just circulating indoor air. You want to make sure that it's pulling in outdoor air to change the air out of the space. And you also don't want it blowing from, if you've got two employees who sit here and here, you don't want it blowing from one to the other in case this person's sick. You want to create general airflow through the space, but always recommended and may end up in our indoor rules once we get there, depending. I'm not sure if it will, but it is a good idea, and we would support it in any indoor space.
And thank you, Grace. The one thing I'll add, hopefully I'm not cutting out, is we'll take the testing question back, but my strong suspicion is that testing restaurant employees won't help a whole lot from a public health standpoint, because I think the main concern is customers who are required to take their face mask off when you're doing dining. I know there was questions raised about the science, and to be overly simple about it, the really simple answer of why dining is a higher risk than grocery stores or some of the other examples that were brought up is that it's inherent to dining is you have to take your face covering off. And the science has really been showing an increasing impact that face coverings have at suppressing the transmission. So I think that unless you could test customers, which is I think a lot further down the road with the antigen testing, I don't think, but I will say, and Mike had brought this up too, it is very helpful in general to have more testing. And so to the extent that restaurants are encouraging their employees because these are essential workers, to be getting regularly tested, that both helps us from a public health standpoint, and it helps us with the state metrics. So that I think that still matters, but I don't think it would necessarily change the dynamic of when indoor dining would be viewed as safe.
But we will take it back, absolutely. And Brian's correct. More testing is better. Testing as much as possible. And we'll see what leadership has to say about that suggestion.
Thank you very much. Was that Rosie? I'm sorry, Mike.
John, just a quick thing to add on to what Grace and Brian said. To my knowledge now, anybody can test as often as they want. Long swabs are no longer used. The short swabs are used. And anybody can test whenever they want. I believe you can get it done for free if your insurance doesn't cover it. We've got 50 testing sites. We had a day a week ago. We tested 11,000 people in one day. The only reason we're in red and having this discussion is because we are super testers. So if all of you would please encourage all your employees and everybody you know, test once a week.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. I'm going to mention that David Nguyen, I see his comment in the chat room. I don't know if David wanted to say anything himself. And David, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to chime in.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good. No, yeah, I've been basically at Pover Restaurant for about 4 or 5 months now. I'm new to Morgan Hill. I'm a restaurateur, and I usually work in San Francisco, Chicago, New York, certain areas like that. I'm more used to fine dining, and this is definitely a little different for me. So it's just a little bit more of a learning process for me as well. But yeah, from basically what I've seen is obviously things are a little bit different just because it's a little town here, and everybody is close-knit, everybody knows each other. And because of that reason, people kind of take it upon themselves to basically kind of do what they want in a matter of speaking sometimes, but we need to enforce that a little bit better as opposed to, San Francisco, where you go to certain restaurants and things are extremely strict. Well, they'll tell you literally, we're gonna hint before we go to your table, please make sure you have a mask on before you go into the restroom. Everything, every little thing is actually done, with the strictest and the most cautious of details in certain areas where certain restaurants here, we can only fight the battles that we can actually win in a matter of speaking here in Morgan Hill is what it is. So again, it's I don't know the restrictions of your town and everything that's in the town, so I can't chime in on that. I'm just saying that there are certain areas where the streets are closed down. It creates a wonderful ambiance. But again, I don't want to limit business on a major street or the most major street in Morgan Hill, obviously. So I don't know how that would work in your area because of that reason. But again, it creates an amazing ambiance when it is actually done correctly, just like a Santana Row or a Parisian atmosphere in a matter of speaking, you know. But again, that's just a temporary thing until things go back to normal, if there is a normal in total. So, you know, other than that, I mean, it's just a matter, you know, it's just the whole 25-mile speed limit. Obviously, we try to enforce that the best that we can, being directly on Monterey Road, unless somebody is there with a radar gun. That's rarely actually foreseen. And obviously on a Friday and Saturday night, it's almost like being on Sunset in LA, where people are constantly cruising back and forth and just basically trying to, you know, show off their cars and trying to go at high speeds and just making noise and whatever have you. So, and again, that's just Monterey Boulevard on where I work. So that's just the feedback that I'm getting from where I've seen at my restaurant.
And I wanted to add that one of the things you did mention was having room to put up tents and making sure that they're good quality tents and they don't get blown down by the weather or cars.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that's also been noted. Edith, did you have something to say?
Did you call on me?
Oh, I thought it looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I had a super quick question, and we can take this offline. But for the county folks, so from the rest of the businesses, we're hearing you loud and clear on where you want the city to step up and support you. So definitely the team is here, and we're all listening, and we'll be going to the drawing board to see what we can do. I was just wondering. From the fact that the city doesn't have a whole lot of resources and we don't get a lot of resources to a small city, wondering if the county had any resources vis-a-vis anything that could support purchasing those large tents or anything like that. And don't mean to put you, Supervisor, on the spot, but certainly offline down the road, we can brainstorm on how we can go support the businesses. Maybe we knock on some doors and do some fundraising.
And just, if I may, just speaking for him, I mean, obviously us as a business, because we're basically, this is all a temporary thing until everything does go back to normal. And the tents that I purchased are basically, they're medium. I don't want to purchase anything permanent because, again, this is not a permanent situation. And we don't want to invest in $1,000 or $1,500 tent like Ashiri in San Francisco, you know, where the city made them take it down a month later because the city ordinance said they couldn't have it. So now they basically lost 4 or 5 tents that they purchased for $1,500, and now it doesn't work for them anymore. Okay, so basically we do with what we have, and the thing is, it's kind of a trial and error is basically what it is, where we basically just purchase, you know, $200, $500 tents, see how it works. So that's why I haven't purchased all 3 tents. I've only purchased 1. See how it works. It's holding up, and we'll see how it works within the next few days. If it doesn't work, then we'll take it down and we'll go a new strategy. But again, this is just a temporary process until we do open up on the inside, because again, that's what we're hoping for, is to open up on the inside. And obviously doing patio is basically 50% of the business as opposed to 100% of business.
If I can chime in on one thing, because you mentioned, David, you mentioned the city of San Francisco telling someone their tent is illegal. From the city's perspective, we care that it's safe. We don't care about much else. Right. So as long as it's safe, we're not going to be telling people to tear down their tents or their tent doesn't comply with our standard tent ordinance or building. You know, as long as it's structurally sound, we're going to do our best to facilitate having those tents.
I appreciate it.
Carrie's been trying to speak.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Yeah, Carrie, and then also then Dan, and I think we'll wrap it up after you two. So go ahead, Carrie.
Okay, hi, thanks. You know, my kind of request is more of a practical one, and I think we're kind of alluding to it now. But you know, the restaurants in the downtown are predominantly mom and pop shops, and they're all distressed. You know, given where we were at the beginning of all of this, with revenues reduced by 90% in the earlier months of COVID, and now we're at what we are Maybe it's 50, 60%. And we're all looking to weatherize. We're all looking to winterize. We're all looking to figure out what do we need to have in place. And so I think it would be really helpful if the city and the county could help out with reimbursing small businesses for some of the winterizing that they need to do to meet all of the guidelines that are being imposed. So things like fire retardant tents, heaters, awnings, the basic infrastructure that needs to be put in place. I think it would be really helpful if we could get some support from the city, possibly from the county, and I would look to you to look creatively, and it's not necessarily a fundraising effort. I think there's a lot of groundwork that's always, done, in terms of fundraising at the, within our community. But I think we're at a state now where we really do need support from the city and from the county, because the businesses, the restaurants here are distressed.
Okay, I think we understand that ask. I don't know if there's an actual easy answer, because as a person who does take a look at the budgets, do you have more?
Yeah, just one thing. I would say, that if the businesses were to use city-approved vendors to purchase the things that are required, I think that would be kind of a caveat to this. So something that, you guys could probably look at.
That might get a little complicated, actually, when we start to direct business. Okay. I will tell you that if you look at the budget, have been following our budget discussions, we're over the next 2-3 years, we're about $17 million in the hole. And so I think that this is, and everybody's basically operating at a deficit. After we talked to Mike about the county, the numbers are staggering. And percentage-wise for our community, with our budget, the numbers are very dramatic.
They are. And I would say that restaurants' numbers are pretty dramatic too at this point.
And we understand that. That's why we're having this conversation. So that's something we can try to discuss. It's going to be it'll be a difficult discussion. And I'm open to any kind of suggestions on how we get there. So with that, I'm going to take that we've gotten that noted. I don't think we're going to get an answer out of that, unfortunately, for you right now. But Dan, you've been waiting patiently. I haven't seen you raise your hand, but do you have a question or a comment?
Thanks, John. Yeah, I have two comments. One is, I think everybody's kind of talked about this, but the work that the Morgan Hill Economic Development Group did right at the beginning of this COVID to allow us to take access to some of the parking areas, to put in these barriers. When we first looked at going outside and dining, I couldn't conceive how I could have more than 30% of my payroll, maybe 35% of my payroll employed. But because the city was so helpful in allowing us to expand into certain parking areas and starting these little temporary parklets, I now have, my payroll is now at about 80% of normal. Now my sales are 50% of normal, and that's not helpful. But at least our servers, our bussers, our expos, our bartenders, and our hostesses are at the 80% level. That's the one thing I wanted to make sure I brought out to the Morgan Hill people. That was extremely helpful. I never thought that would happen. Having said that, I've been thinking a lot about this, as all the other restaurant people have also, and I appreciate what Nick had to say. I'm frankly not sure anything we're going to do is going to materially impact our payroll levels or our revenue levels in the dead of winter. And so to reiterate what Nick was saying, we need somehow, some way to find some mechanism by which we could be open. Rosie had ideas about fans, and it was things that wouldn't work. I'd love to have that kind of a dialogue about how we could go inside at 25% level, because my fear is in December, January, and February, we're just not going to be able to attract our customers. If it's rainy, I don't care how pretty your tents are. We've seen that movie before. So I'm on the side of trying to find some mechanism to let us go inside and dining, no matter how austere it is. Otherwise, I'm afraid my restaurant anyway is going to go back to only being able to do 15 to 20% of payroll, and that'll be a problem. And then my final comment, John, is that I heard talks about road diets and shutting down Monterey, and my only thought on that is that we take our time in thinking about this, because I don't think that's going to materially help us this winter. And something like shutting down Monterey, which I frankly am in support of, but whereas I'm not in support of going to one lane for other reasons, needs to be well thought out, needs to have a real plan in place so that we, the entire downtown, can embrace it and march forward and make it a success, like many of the cities that are doing up north. But I wouldn't use this COVID wintertime phenomena to quickly make a movement on single lane or closing down Monterey. I just don't think it would be productive. And I personally would like to have a more thoughtful structure and plan before we did something like that. And I also want to thank everybody for their ideas and the concepts, and the county for listening. I'm afraid I'm a little bit of a pessimist when it comes to what's going to happen this winter.
Thank you, Dan. You're always a voice of reality, and that's something that we really need to deal with at this time, is reality. And I think that everybody is taking a look at it from a very realistic approach. So what I'm going to say is that this conversation is not over. I see multiple conversations. I think one is just basically we need to keep in touch with our with a full complement of city and county counterparts. I personally, as well as I'm sure the Downtown Association, the Chamber, would like to reach out to you to further these discussions, because I see several side discussions that we need to kind of work through. Everything from, how do we shut down Monterey Road, whether it's one lane, all of it, whether it's really an experiment for the winter or something that's practical for the summer when we start up again, like we've seen in other cities. Conversations like that. So what I'd like to do is we have Grace, Brian, Mike, and Larry. If you all would like, if there's any real quick closing statement you'd like to make, I could give you 30 seconds or so, because we're actually at 4:30. We made it to 4:30 and this conversation was alive and vital the whole time. I really, really appreciate what everybody's done. But I would like to give you all a little bit of feedback on what you got from this and what you think we should be doing next.
Sure, I'll start. I'm in a different position than Grace and Brian as an elected official. Grace and Brian, they have policies and bosses that they must report to and follow. Elected officials such as myself can say what we want to say, but at the end of the day, the board doesn't have a vote. But I have not been shy to say that we need to open businesses more. We need to live with this virus. We need to hope for a vaccine. We need to hope for whatever. We've got to live and work with it. The county has cut our DA and Sheriff's Department 15%. We have a $400 million deficit. We're probably going to lose 1,000 people starting in November or shortly thereafter. And the businesses will simply stop to exist, and the businesses are what pay for the services that the county provides. So the county and the state have got to figure out a way to allow businesses to go back to work. Yes, we'll have more people get sick. Yes, more people go to the hospital. But we're going to have to do that, or we're not going to have the revenue to pay for the services that you depend on, which includes teachers. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you. Larry, do you have something? And then also the rest of the city staff, it'd be great to hear from all of you. Larry.
Yeah, John, thanks. Again, I want to thank you for pulling us all together, and for the professional staff from both City of Morgan Hill and County for joining us so that we have an opportunity to ask questions and hear things. I have a couple of takeaways, things that I think we could work on immediately right away. I'm sure Chris took great notes about the street lights and twinkle lights. I think we can get that taken care of right away, get those lights on earlier so that downtown becomes as safe as possible. I read Christina's comments about this.
Lost you.
Lost you.
With Christina and with the chief about lowering the speed limit and somehow quieting the traffic on Monterey. And I think we ought to move forward with trying to do some things along those lines. If there is some way that the city can participate in helping with some of the sort of the equipment needs, we should talk about that. John has already expressed the difficulties that we're going to have with that, but maybe there are some other resources that we can help with. I don't think I like the idea of if there is procurement abilities that we can help with, or perhaps the county can help with, we should explore those as well. So I think there's a couple of great takeaways that we can take some action on right away. There's a lot of other things that we're going to need to take some time on. I hope we do this again, John and Mike. I hope that we can include you as well as we do this, because we've got to keep the dialogue going on this and find some more things. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Edith Ramirez, you are normally right in the middle of these conversations. Is there anything that you would like to say?
I thought that the dialogue was fabulous. Thank you. We have homework, so we're going to go and put our heads together and looking forward to figuring out how we can partner with the county and with the businesses to survive the winter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edith. Chris.
Just great information. As Councilmember Carr said, I will follow up on the twinkle lights where we can. Some are photo cells, not timers, unfortunately, that aren't easily adjusted. But the other thing is just, in addition to just a road diet, and I know we talk about that a lot, but I think the thing we've said from the beginning, if there's space that's usable, we want to find a way for you all to use it. So keep talking to Edith or let me know, and we are 100% open to trying to find public space for you to use. So we will help as much as we can there.
Thank you. Don, is there anything you'd like to
add? Only that what I said about the tents goes for everything. If you find that red tape is what's holding you back from your operations or being able to comply with the COVID requirements and stay in business, then please let us know, because as we have for several of our businesses, we've been able to cut through some of and really expedite some of our permitting processes, and those are things that we definitely want to look at. We don't want permits to get in the way of operating your business effectively during this difficult time.
Christina, I have not heard your voice today, I don't think.
I appreciate the comments that my teammates made. The one thing that I want to add to this is that, of course, this issue is not unique to Morgan Hill. And we benefit from some of the committees that we sit on a county basis, on a regional basis, from economic development to just general COVID sort of meetings and calls and committees. And so we're gathering ideas from others, and we need to leverage ideas that we hear about from other cities and share that sort of information as we move forward. Thank you for organizing this today.
Thank you. Now, Grace and Brian, I kind of cut you off. I think we usurped you. Is there anything that you would like to say that maybe you took away from this?
No, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank everybody. I think we took pretty detailed notes, and there were several good ideas I thought that came out of this, and we'll put our heads together over here and see what we can get answered, and then continue the conversation.
Yeah, I echo Brian. Thank you so much, John, for putting it together, and everyone for joining us. And it's really important that we do hear what your situation is and hear any ideas you may have. And we are going to take those back to Dr. Cody, to the leadership team, to make sure that they hear what's being said and what's going on. And we'd also be very happy to join any more of these calls if that would be helpful to you.
Thank you.
Well, I think I've covered everybody. I know David Dindak is probably the last representative of an organization that hasn't had a chance to speak. David, do you want to say something real quick?
Just thank you guys so much. I knew you were listening, and I thank you guys for giving us an ear.
Okay, thank you. And so what I'd like to do is close by saying thank you for everybody that participated. This is a conversation that needed to take place, and I think we had the right people here. I would like to have heard from more of our restaurant operating community, but I think the voices here were very, very thoughtful, detailed, and so I personally got a lot out of it. I really thank our friends from the county. This is a conversation we can't have without you. And so it's really important to hear. So hopefully you'll remember us, remember our faces, remember what we look like. Remember when you see our email addresses, you'll associate with a person.
John, you're my screensaver.
I notice it's usually off, right? But I want
thank
to,
you, John.
yeah, thank all of you guys. Thank you, city staff, everybody for really joining in. And, you know, I was glad to make the phone calls to support our business community, Downtown Association again, Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Morgan Hill. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Good night.
Bye now.
Stay well, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Take care.
Thanks again, John.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to get things done.